We're going to talk a little bit about terrapins, and terrapins are a type of turtle that are exclusively found in the estuary. So they're in an area of water where there's a mixture of salt and fresh, and they inhabit the marsh areas like you see out here today. I want to introduce the life cycle of some of these terrapins. First of all, we have what we call hatchlings. They hatch out in the high marsh areas or on bay beach areas, and this one just hatched out last week. You can see it has a little egg tooth up here on the top that it actually uses to get out of the egg, and underneath it has a little yolk attachment that it had in the egg, and it absorbs it into its body. So this is a hatchling, and that's when they're really vulnerable in the system, because when they're eggs or they're hatchlings, Dan's going to explain a little bit more about that.
Here we have what we call a nest protection device, and basically what it is you put it over the nest after the mother turtle lays the eggs, and it keeps out predators such as foxes and other birds that would come along and eat the baby terrapins. But the holes are just large enough to let the juveniles out when they're hatched, so they can get out safely without having to worry about being eaten or preyed upon by other animals. And
thanks, Dan. Yeah, terrapins usually nest in the system here throughout the month of June into July, and they could come back multiple times to the nest sites we're finding. Sometimes, though, they hatch out in the fall, and when they hatch out in the fall, they have a less of a chance for survival. So what happens is they will overwinter in the nest, and this is an example of a terrapin that hatched out late last fall, that stayed in the nest, and then it was out of the nest sometime in June. And this one was in a situation where it was going to be dried out because it didn't make the water, and we picked it up in June, and this is a new hatch, but really it stayed in the nest for a year. Then as they grow, that's what the question is. We don't know what happens when they grow. Where do they go? When they're about 1.5 to 2 years old, like this one, we don't know where they go in the system. And we know that they feed on a lot of the small organisms that the marsh has, but we just don't know exactly, where they're inhabiting. And that's what we're working on, trying to find out how they're moving in these great marsh systems in this estuary. So this one's about 2 years old or close to that. You can see all of them have different types of designs on them too. There's not just one pattern, and that's what makes these turtles so unique. If you see another species of turtle, like aquatic turtles, even snapping turtles, they all look the same, but not terrapins. And as they grow, they get to be about this size and even bigger. This is an adult female. She's about 7 years old. You could tell some of the females because they have a smaller tail, and there's other ways of telling, but that's one of the basic ways. You also could tell some of the females because what they'll do is they'll come back up on the nesting sites, and they're much bigger than the adult male counterparts. And she has these really neat type of flippers. Her rear appendage is like flippers, and she uses that to swim and also dig a nest. And the problem is when they're adults, sometimes even juveniles, they're able to get into some of these commercial crab traps that you see over here. And the openings allow them to get in, and if they don't get out in time, they'll drown. So they can basically stay in a trap almost 24 hours. They can shut down their systems enough, but then beyond that, they will actually drown. And they have these excluder devices that they worked on to help keep them out of the system. So they're fitted into a trap to help keep the adults out. And juveniles, unfortunately, sometimes they still do get into the traps if they can't get out. And that's another situation. But there are a lot of human influences, with the terrapins. Like we're affecting habitat, what they feed on, and also, things like this. And some of them even come up on road areas like pavement to kind of bask or go to nesting sites. And unfortunately, they're victims of cars that run them over. So there's programs out there. There's programs in New Jersey, but we're looking to study their movement. We're tagging some of the females with a microchip. Seeing which next locations they come back to every year. So it's an ongoing study that the students here are all involved with, and we're also doing a lot of terrapin education because we're just trying to find out what they're doing in our system, how they're inhabiting, what they're feeding on. So there's a lot of questions out there, so we're trying to put together some of the answers, at least in the system here.